Alright, this is a timer and counter tutorial. So I'm going to first import the counter class, and then I'm going to import the timer, simple timer class. And now I'm going to go to my world, and I'm going to put the counter on the screen, and I'm going to put it in the middle of the world. So I'm going to get the height and the width, divide by 2, and so this is my x coordinate and this is my y coordinate. So when I do that, I should see a counter in the middle of the world, as long as I put a semicolon there. Okay, what I want to do is make that counter go up every second. So now I'm going to use the simple timer. Now what you have to be aware of is that this is what we call a constructor, and the constructor happens once and once only. So I can't put my code for the timer in here, or else it will only happen one time. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So I'm going to create a simple timer object, and I'm going to call it Tim. Let's call it Tim for timer. And that right there, this is the syntax we use to create it. So this is saying I'm going to create a timer called Tim. And what I want to do is I want to, as soon as the world is created, let's start the timer. So I go tim.mark, like that. That will start the timer. Now, if I run this right now, you won't see anything, but the timer is actually running in the background. We have started the timer, but we haven't told it to show on the screen, so I have to do that. So I go back to my world, and now what I need is I'm going to make an act method. So the world has a constructor which will happen only one time. So all this stuff happens at the very start of the world, but never again. Now I'm going to add an act method that's going to happen over and over and over and over again. So in here, what is it that I want to happen over and over again? Well, I'll show you. What I want to do is I want to take the timer value and put it in the counter. Now here's where I get a little stuck, because what I want to do is I want to refer to the counter, but I go, wait a minute, I didn't give the counter a name. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to paste it. And the same way I gave the timer a name called Tim, I'm going to create a counter with a name called time count. Let's go with that. So I've made a timer object called Tim, and I've made a counter object called time count, and I want to add time count to the middle of the screen. Now nothing's going to change. All that's changed is I've given the counter a name, time count, and I'm putting it on the screen. So there it is. Now it just has a name. So I go back into my world, and in the act method, now what I want to do is say, okay, I know that there's a counter called time count. If I hit dot and then control space, one of the things I can do to a counter is set the value. If I set the value to the value of the timer's control space, millis elapsed. What that will do is show the number of milliseconds elapsed in the counter. Let's see what happens. I run it, and you can see that it's going up very fast, and that's because it's counting in milliseconds. So that's great, it's working, but we don't really need it in milliseconds. So how do we convert milliseconds to seconds? Well, we divide by 1,000. So now if I run it, but what if you want to control the timer with a key? So now we can go back into my world, and what we can do is say, well, we don't want this to happen necessarily right away. Let's say we'll go up here, and we're going to make an integer variable. We're going to call it start. And start, let's just say that's 0. So when the world is created, we make an integer called start, and its value is 0. Down here, we're going to say if start is equal to 1, then we're going to do this. Now you might be sitting there going, well, start's not 1, so this isn't going to happen. That's exactly right, it's not. So let's also put a reset of the timer here. So if we hit, or if start is 1, then we're going to reset the timer, and we're also going to cause the timer to show its value like this. So now I'm going to put some code that says if Greenfoot.isKeyDown, and let's say S for start. You can put any letter you want in there, character. So if we hit the S button, we'll say start is now equal to 1. So starts 0, and it stays 0 until the user presses S. When they hit S, then start becomes 1, and once start becomes 1, then the timer will be reset, and it will set the value. And I'm just realizing I can't put that there. I will have to put that there, because we don't want to reset the timer over and over and over and over again. Alright, so we hit S, we'll set start to 1, we reset the timer, and then as long as start is 1, it's going to show the value. And so if we run this, notice nothing's happening. I'm going to hit S right now, and it starts counting up. The other thing I can do with the timer as well, I don't have to start a timer, or I don't have to start the counter at 0 necessarily. I could say in the construction of the world, I could say I want the time count value to say start at 30. And then in here, I don't have to set the value to the milliseconds elapsed. What I could do is say if the milliseconds elapsed on the counter gets to be 1,000, that means a second has gone by. Sorry, I keep calling it T because I'm used to calling them T, but if tim.millis elapsed, there you go. If a second has gone by, then what we want to do is take the value of the time counter and add -1. So again, so when we hit the S button, meaning that we've started, now take that timer and see if a second has gone by. If a second has gone by, take 1 off of the time count and start the timer again and wait for another second to go by. Let's see if this works. There's your 30. We hit run. Nothing happens. Hit S. And we've got a countdown. All right. So timers are pretty simple once you get the hang of them. Basically, you put them into the worlds and the actors where you want them. You can use them in conjunction with counters to make them count up, count down, and you can control things using millis elapsed and a lot of if statements. So I hope that helped.